Hey everyone, Corey McAvoy here. It's Saturday night in Jersey City, and it's quarantine time right now, so not a lot going on. So I figured I would take a moment to do some coding and some lecturing over a new library that I discovered recently called mst-gql. mst-gql is a basically state management library that is also a GraphQL client. If you've seen some of my other videos before, you know that Mobx State Tree is by far my favorite state management library. It provides all the benefits of Redux without all the pain, so you don't have all the boilerplate that you have to deal with the actions and reducers, selectors, and types. It takes all that away, but it still provides like the immutability that Redux provided. And it's very model based, which is like really good for modularizing your apps and really working with state management. But it also provides the benefits of a GraphQL client. If you ever worked with Apollo is a great library, especially if you're using like a code generator. This mst-gql, it also provides the same benefits. It provides optimistic updates, queries, mutations, subscriptions. It has a cache, but it also has a built-in code generator into it, which is called scaffolding. So you can automatically generate all types for all your models just by running one command. And that command essentially, it's a compile time command, and it queries your GraphQL model and just generates a whole bunch of typings for you. So it makes things so much easier. So to be honest, I'm surprised that it's not more popular. I mean, it's got 400 stars right now on GitHub, and there's like one video on it by Mike Westgate, the creator. I think that this will eventually gain traction and it'll get super popular. So really, I just want to do a video over this thing. I've prepared, a little slideshow, but this is the GitHub page. I would encourage you to go out and take a look at it and read the documentation. It's super verbose, which is very helpful. But in the context of this video, we're just going to go over a slideshow that I prepared. So let me just make this bigger. So this is mst-gql, and I'm Corey McAvoy, and I'm an engineer for Raptor Labs. Okay, so Mobx State Tree, it's basically Mobx State Tree and a GraphQL client put together. And some of the benefits I'd already mentioned. It provides automatic type generation, for GraphQL, models, queries, mutations, and subscriptions. And really what this means is it's compile time error checking, and you get all the benefits of autocomplete, which from a developer experience, it just makes things so much easier. There's also really strong support for client-side state management, and this is something that has been a problem with Apollo. Apollo is a great GraphQL client, but working with the state management side of the library, I personally found it a bit challenging. And then also like manually updating the cache, I could do it, I could figure it out, but it was just kind of a nightmare to do it. This library also provides a very model-driven approach, and you'll kind of see that when we demo it. But it's essentially grabbing your GraphQL models, and it's creating a Mobx State Tree model for each one of those, which is really nice. It also supports local views, action, state, and then model life cycles. So like as soon as like when the model initially gets created, there's a lifecycle method that you can trigger. Same thing if like a snapshot gets updated. There's also support for all the great Apollo features such as optimistic updates, persistence to local storage, descriptions, and a whole lot more. Obviously, if you look over here at the right, here's just some code snippets of some of the the benefits of the type system of this library. If you just type in store and then dot, you get all the different queries that you can potentially run that's based on your GraphQL model. And same thing where you're actually extracting out the results. You can get, obviously this situation, they're looking at the film, and you can get all the film properties just right in your code editor. So it's a great developer experience. So how this library works, it works in two parts. The first one is a compile time step, and that's essentially just generating all your types. It's just one command, and you feed it your GraphQL endpoint. It'll go and look at your endpoint, and it'll look at all the models there and all the properties of it, and it will create these really, really verbose types that are automatically generated for your Mobx State Tree models. And you can see that here at the on the right, my two different images. The first one up there is like an example of the film model, and on the film model there's several different properties that are on my GraphQL instance. And it really, even another benefit, it provides all the annotations there too. So such as like the title, it says this is the title of the film. So it's super powerful type generation, which is really helpful. Now this is a compile time step, so you do have to do it like as you're coding. So there's no like runtime support for that. So more or less, if you update your backend, you will have to run this again. And obviously you can use it as a runtime library, so you have access to all the queries and mutations and models, like as the product's actually being ran. So here's like a little flow, and I already kind of mentioned this before, but you can imagine it. There's two sides. You've got your front end and your back end. Your back end, you've got your GraphQL data model, and then your front end will be like React, or I guess technically you could use Angular or Vue here, but my example, I'm using React. And then the first step is you run that compile time command, the yarn mst format ts, and then your endpoint. That'll generate all your types that'll be generated locally. And then you can interact with those, and you can extend those models, which is really some of the how you actually manage your local state. And you can create computer properties and much more. It's super powerful. As I mentioned in the previous slide, there's also local state management support, and here's just a little bit of a snippet, of kind of what's going on. Imagine like a film model, like think of like a Star Wars film. There's a lot of stuff that you can access. You can extend off of just the general film model. In this example, I just showed like one little thing where I'm just taking the created date from when the film was created, and I'm just creating another view that just puts the the created property in a different date format. So it's just one small example, but you can get really creative with it. There's also support for actions, which allow you to update the model, and you can update it locally, remotely, or both, just depending on how you want. And you can also do an optimistic update. And obviously, there's lifecycle methods available as well, which is handy. So that's a bit of an overview of MST GraphQL. I think for this video, I was just going to do like a basic example of where we just spin up a Star Wars GraphQL API. It's just super easy to do, and we'll just create like a basic React app that just interacts with it. I figured that'd be simple enough. So the Star Wars GraphQL API, it's really easy to find. It's just the swappy GraphQL. You can basically just like look that up on Google, or you can also see it in the notes below. But what you want to do is just click the clone or download, and then copy to clipboard, and then we will open up a terminal, and you navigate to whatever directory you use, and just do a git clone and the name of the endpoint. And then you can actually, before I do that, let me just make a new directory, mst-gql example. You can use the same name if you want, totally fine. And just go ahead and navigate into it, and now run your git clone. That'll run. As soon as that finishes, just navigate into that directory and just run yarn, which will install all the dependencies. Now it's just building the cache, which is fine. You don't really need to worry about any of this. We're just basically creating a GraphQL server. And then just run yarn run start. And this really should be all you have to do with the backend part of this. So now it's listening on this port. So if you just copy that, run this in the browser, it should throw an error, but it's okay. So that's fine. And just do /graphical. This is essentially your GraphQL interface that you can use to interact with this model. I believe I can just do like all films and films, and we can just look at a few properties. Created. Okay. You just run that, and so this is the Star Wars API. It's just got a lot of Star Wars information in it. So that's good. So that's ready to go. Now the next step is just create our React app. So what I'll do is I'll bring the terminal back. I'll actually open up another window, and I'll just let that run in the background. Go ahead and navigate back to your directory. And go ahead and create a new React app. And to do this, it's super simple. Just do npx, assuming you already have npx installed. If you don't, go ahead and install it. But you just run npx create -react-app and --TypeScript, because we are doing this with TypeScript. You get a ton of benefits with this library using TypeScript. So I highly recommend that. And then we can just create a name for it. I think I'll just do client. I think that's totally fine. And hit enter and let that run. Okay, that finished, so that's great. So I guess just to make sure it's working, just do a well, actually first navigate into the directory and just do yarn run start to make sure it's working. All right, so there is our just base React app. Now we're ready to hook everything up. So go back to the terminal. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of this. I'm just going to go ahead and open my code editor. So just do whatever code editor you use. I use Visual Studio Code. I'm a big fan of this. Alright, so let me just leave your terminal there, because we will need access to the terminal later on when we scaffold. But let me just open this guy up. I'll go and open up my terminal at the bottom. And I'll open up app.tsx, and I will increase the size here just so you can see it. Okay. Now what we need to do is we need to install a lot of dependencies into the application, and almost all of these are Mobx State Tree related. And really, to do this, we are going to run a shortcut. If you just go to the Mobx State Tree GitHub page, you just kind of scroll down a little bit on the installation part. It'll give you some instructions on everything to install. So just go ahead and copy and paste that guy. If I can get it. And go back to your terminal and just paste that guy in. Now we're ready to actually scaffold the app. So in this situation, it's just one command to run it. So just go back to, really the best place is here in the Mobx State Tree GitHub page, and you'll see the command here. It's just yarn mst format, ts and the endpoint. So just copy that guy, and go back to our terminal, paste that in. I've got an extra period in there. And because the way our GraphQL server is set up, the Star Wars API, you actually won't use the GraphQL endpoint. You'll just use the default endpoint. And also the port will be different. So instead of 4000, you'll want to have to open up the terminal and look and see what port it's running on. In our case, it's 52459. So whatever your port is, paste that and just do a find and replace with this command and then run it. And this should go out and generate all of our models for us, which saves a ton of time. All right, so that just finished. And as you can see here, it generated a ton of models. And then if you look at our project directory, we have this models directory. If you expand that out, these are all of our models. And so you can just, open these guys up. Let me just get some more real estate here. And you can just kind of scroll around and look and see what they've done. For example, here's the film model base. And I'll kind of explain the base and the non-base here in a second. But as you can see here, here are all the different types and models and properties. You can see all this stuff here. If you actually open up the GQL or the graphical, which is right here, you can actually look at the docs over here. And if you go to films, look for the film object. So if you actually look at the film documentation in the actual swappy GraphQL interface, you can actually see all these different types here and the annotations. So for example, this is a title of type string, and it's got this is the title of the film. If you go and look at our code, this is the same exact thing. It's a title of type string. It also includes this stuff in here for null or undefined, but it also has the same exact annotation. So literally what it's doing is it's going and grabbing all that information on the backend GraphQL server and just recreating the model here in Mobx State Tree, which saves a ton of time. Now, one important thing to note about all these files is there's almost always a .base.ts and just a .ts. The .base, this is a MST generated file, and it's not supposed to be modified manually. This is literally just like the automatically generated file, don't touch it. Now, you're probably asking yourself, well, then how do I, actually, manage my state and create computed fields? So you'll actually do that in just the flat out, .ts file. So the .ts file actually extends the base. So I think if you see here, this is film model base. If you go into just a normal file here, you should see, so this is the film model, and it actually is equal to the film model base, and then it has some extensions off of it. And you can do like actions. You can also do like .views, and much more. So super helpful. So so that's kind of an overview of the generated files. Now I think for this project we're actually going to use some of these. So I guess we can go ahead and get started by going back into our main code. There's a few steps we actually have to do to make it to where our app can actually interact, with our state management. So come in here and just clean this stuff up. I'll just do a div for now. And I'll just do a hello world, just for now as a placeholder. But what we need to do is we actually have to create our root store. And I think what I'll do is I'll just create another directory, because that is best practice for creating your model or your store. You'll see other people doing this, but just create a new folder called store, and we'll just create one file in there and just name it index.ts. And here we actually need to create our store. To do that, just do const root store, and we're going to grab something called the root store, which is something that, well, let me just import it first so you can understand it better. Do import root store, capital, that's very important, from ..models. This is basically the root generated store from that scaffolding. It has access to like all the models that we have. And set this equal to root store. And you're going to do, whoops, you're going to do .create. And this is going to take two parameters. One is like the initial snapshot, which we don't have one in this case. So we'll just call it undefined. And the second one is a bunch of options. So just create an object, give yourself some more space, and we'll do GQL HTTP client. And we're going to run a function called create HTTP client. And this actually comes from mst-gql. So do create HTTP client. I don't know why that didn't auto import. I'll just import it manually. Create HTTP client from mst.gql. All right, that's much better. And this is just going to be your endpoint. Let's see, what's that complaining about? So this is just going to be our GraphQL endpoint, and just go ahead and grab that from our terminal here. And as per our backend API, it doesn't use the GraphQL endpoint, so just use the root endpoint, totally fine. And then let's export our root store so we have access to it at the root of our app. So just do export root store. And now let's go back to the root of our app. And essentially what we have to do is we have to surround our app with the store context. And the store context is something that we also get from our automatically generated files. So just go ahead and import that guy. Do import store context, and that's going to come from /models, and we're going to surround our app with that. So let's do store context dot, and this is going to be a provider, and surround the app with it. So there's one property that we're going to pass, and that's going to be, see if it gives this autocomplete. It's going to be a value. We're actually going to set that to our root store that we created in our other file here. Import that guy, and then this should be good to go. Let me save that. Now, don't save that. Let me just make sure that this still is functional. So just run start in your client directory. All right, so it shows hello world, which is great. That's what we want to see. I do want to make a quick note. There was an issue logged by somebody So apparently if you're on TypeScript version 3.7 .x, this will generate an error. So what you may want to do is just double check in package.json that your TypeScript version is 3.8. So as long as it's 3.8, you should be good to go. So we should be good to go there. So now I think what we can do is we can get a sense of what it's like to actually work with this with these generated types. And this is really where a lot of the benefit comes in for for this thing. So let me remove this, and I think what I'll do, I'm going to be using React hooks for this. Let me see. So with Mobx State Tree, you have to surround your function with a higher order component called an observer. So let me just import that. Import observer. And if you're using class components, you can use a decorator. But I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to use the higher order component. So I'll do mobx react. Alright, that should be good. Now let me come down to the bottom, and I'll just surround app with observer. Alright. Now we're going to use a hook called useQuery. And this is something that we'll grab from the generated types. But it's generated types in a special file called reactutils. I guess you could kind of take a look at it here. You scroll down. Where is it? Yeah, reactutils. Yeah, it's right here. So we're going to use that guy. And you'll just do... It takes 3 different properties, just like Apollo does. Loading, data, and error. So you do const data, comma, loading, comma, error. And you can set that equal to our hook, which is use query. And it imported it from the wrong directory, so let me just fix that. Query from models./reactutils. There we go. Okay, and this is going to take in a parameter of a function, and this function is going to have a parameter called store. This is basically access to our entire store. So this function, let me just go ahead and expand this guy out. You can basically what you're doing is you're returning your whatever query you're doing. So I think in this example here, let me just do return store. If you hit dot, you're gonna see you have access to basically the entire store here. If you just kind of glance through here, there's a lot of different stuff you can do. I think for this example, I'm just gonna look at the films. So I'll just do query all films. And this guy takes in 3 different parameters, the latter 2 which are optional. The first one is variables, and I'm not going to use any variables here actually. This is just for pagination stuff, which I have no use for. And I'll do comma, and then the next one is it's called a query builder. And if you're familiar with GraphQL, this is essentially where you can specify your return types. And this is actually a function that generates it. So just create an arrow function like that, and do qb dot, and let the autocomplete come in. This one is a bit interesting. What you do here is there's several things you can do, but a proper thing is to just specify the films, and then this thing itself is actually a function that takes in another function. I know that sounds confusing, but just bear with me here. So so I guess this query returns an array of films, and then within that sorry, it should be film, and you do have film here, and this part's super interesting. So you can specify the different type of return properties off of the actual film. I think maybe to give you context, let me come back over here to this graphical, and this is the actual query that we did. We did all films, and this returned like a film object, and then on the film object we can specify different properties. If you actually look at our code here, we had our query builder, and then we did .films, which is that first property there, and then we wanted like properties of the films. So that's why you actually see this this additional function here, because you're specifying like what properties you want off of that film. And this is a super interesting use case for TypeScript. You can do film and then dot. I don't know why it's not giving me the autocomplete there. You can do like film title dot. Okay, there we go. That's better. And now you can like infinitely, put whatever properties you want. You can just append it with the dot, which is I'm pretty impressed by. So you can title and then created, and like what other fields do we want here? Let's get the director, release date, and producers. So you can just do dot director. Come on, autocomplete. Director dot producers, and then what was the other one? Release date. Release date. Yeah. So here, yeah, we're just getting the film. We're just getting all the properties that we want off of it, which is nice. Now there is a third property, on this, query, but we're not going to use it. I think you've got like server-side rendering stuff and like something else. Oh yeah, fetch policy. So you can fetch it from the cache, or you can fetch it from the server, or what have you. Same thing that you can do with Apollo. I'm not going to use that here, so I'll just leave that off. Okay, so that query should be good. Now, after that's done, we can actually use it. So in this case, we do want to do checks for like loading and error. So I'll just create like little if statements for that. If loading, return, I don't know, I'll just specify loading, then if error, I don't know, I'll just do return p error. And now at this point, like, you should be confident that your data will actually be populated. So to use it, just come into your JSX and specify your data parameter and do data dot. There's all films, just like we got in graphical. And this is actually an array, or sorry, no, this is an array. Off of that, we can grab the films, which is an array, and we can map over that guy, and I'll just do a singular film and then arrow function, and I guess I'll just return, let's see, what do I got here? Film dot, well, I don't know if it's going to give me the autocomplete. Okay, there we go. Let's do film.title. Whoops. And let me just create a few more lines. Just create a fragment. And I guess I'll maybe do created. Yeah, I think that'll be good. So let me just save that and see if it worked. So I think I made a small mistake here, but no worries. I think the observer needs to be within, the store provider or the store context of provider, which is fine. We just have to make a small change. So we just need to create another file or another component. I'll just call it main.tsx. And in here, I think what I'll do, all right, so we're just going to move some of this stuff into there. Which is fine. And from here, we're just going to call main. Just got to rename this guy to main. And I think, yeah, export default main. And I'll do observer here. And then just import main here. Okay. And I guess in here we just have to clean up all the imports and stuff. So let me move all the import statements. Let's see, store context, that stays. Observer actually moves. Okay, it's already there. And I do have to wrap this thing with observer, which it already is. I need to make sure this guy does not wrap observer. Okay, and over here, I think this should be good to go now. Let me save that. Don't worry if you didn't follow any of that migration. Just, you can feel free to check the code after we're done. So let's go back to our app. All right, and this looks a lot better. Now we've got, we've basically got our Star Wars titles and the created date next to each one. So now it's rendering it appropriately, which is great. Another feature that we could potentially do is we can do a computed field, and that's another power of Mobx State Tree. And it's super simple to do. I think for this one, all we'll do is we'll just format this date. Right now, it's obviously like it's just in its general ISO format. So I think we'll format it just to do like the actual date, rather than like the time and the time zone and stuff. So to do that, it's super easy. All we do is we go into the models, and we're going to look for the film model, and not the film base model, just the film model. And what we'll do is we won't use an action here. We'll just do a view. So we'll do like dot. This is all Mobx State Tree stuff, but you can do dot views, And this is really similar to actions. It has like a self parameter, and it's going to return a array of views. So I think for this example, I'll do like a getter, and I'll do formatted created date, and this will be a function, and this will just be self dot, and I'll do like created. Actually, do return self dot created, and I'm going to use a library called Moment in order to format this guy. So in your terminal, just open up like a new entry and do yarn add moment. And since we're using TypeScript, also add the types for moment, just as best practice. Yarn add at type/moment, and add it as a dependency, or a development dependency with the dash capital D. All right, and then in your code, just import moment, which I'm hoping this auto imports for me, which it does not. And basically pass in that self.created as a parameter, and then do a dot format. You can specify whatever format you want. So I'll do day / month / year. I think I'll do dashes instead. Let me save that guy. Now that that view has been created, we have to actually use it. So let me see if I can, if it give me access to it. Let's do film dot formatted create date and save it. And I think we have to actually restart the development server because we added a dependency. Oh nope, it's good to go. So there you go. There's your computed property. And you could extend this, and it's super powerful, but that kind of gives you a sense of how to interact with that. So at this point, I think this is good enough for a demo. If you want to tackle this, you can go ahead and take a look. There's a lot more that I didn't cover that you could also do, such as mutations. You could do mutations, to the GraphQL server. You can do alterations to the local state. There's tons of stuff you can do. So I would encourage you to go ahead and dive into the docs and take a look at that. If you have any questions, just leave a comment in the video description, and I'll see if I can get back to you. So I hope that's super helpful. That's all for the video. Thank you so much, and have a good night.